Démosle un fuerte aplauso a Steve Dauphin.
Buenos días, mis amigos. Mi español es muy mal, so I think I'll do the rest of the talk in English, if that's okay with you. All right, it's great to be here today. Thank you. How many of you have been to a symphony orchestra? Any high school, college, professional? Raise your hand if you've been to a symphony orchestra production at some point. Okay, now be truthful. How many of you enjoyed the symphony orchestra production? Raise your hand. All right, that's very good. So I'm one of those people that I love the symphony orchestra for about 15 minutes, right? I love it. I said, we're going to go. We get excited. We go to the venue, and the music starts, and it's really wonderful. And after about 15 minutes, I start looking at the program. I say, okay, how much longer? How much longer? And I hate to admit that, but that's true. So several years ago, I was going through that process, and I had gotten past the point where I was looking for the end, and I started to really focus on what was happening in the symphony. And I started watching every little detail of the room, and I started to think about what a magnificent thing was happening. The exquisite precision of the musicians, the smallest movement of the conductor could change the direction of the symphony. But beyond that, we had a room full of customers who had voluntarily opened their wallets and paid money for tickets to fund this event, and they were happy. And the people who were working, the professionals on stage, were getting paid, and they were happy. And no harm was being done. Only the smallest possible harm to the environment could be occurring there. This was truly a beautiful thing, and I really thought, and to this day I still think, it's one of the best things that we humans do. If you think about all the things that we do as human beings, this is one of the best things that we do. What I would like to propose to you today is that starting a business to solve an important problem, if you do it a certain way, can be an equally beautiful thing. It just takes a little longer, but it can certainly have a larger impact. So I've been very fortunate. As Alfredo said, I've been in the venture capital business for 20 years. I started just before the dot-com bubble, and for some of you who are pretty young, that's when, of course, Amazon and all these huge companies today were just getting started, and almost any company that had a dot-com in their name could raise money easily, and some of them could go public quickly, and people were getting rich for no reason at all. And so in 1998, like every other knucklehead or many other knuckleheads in the United States, I said, hey, I need to do that. I want to be in the venture capital business. And so organized some people who had a little bit of confidence in me and a couple of partners, and we started making investments. And you know what? It was great. We put money into these companies and they took off, and we thought we were really smart. Well, then the dot-com crash happened, and we weren't so smart anymore. And we realized that the early success that we had had really been lucky, more so than smart. And so from that time forward, I've developed I would hopefully an improved view of what it takes to be a great company. And I'm very fortunate today, and our team and I are very fortunate today to work with some truly extraordinary companies. And these are just a few, but Enviva Biomass is the world's largest renewable energy biomass company in the world. PowerGen, based in Kenya, is trying to do distributed microgrids, so areas that haven't had electricity before can now have electricity and pay on their phones. SharedX, based in Peru, is trying to reinvent the organic agriculture model in a way that smallholder farmers that are in the area can ride along with their success. Selena, of course, you know well here, is trying to help us think differently about soil and the 6 inches under our feet that's so powerful and important to us. TrackRef is a company in Nashville, Tennessee that's trying to work on the #1 environmental problem on Earth, which is refrigerant leakage. How do we keep refrigerators and air conditioning equipment from leaking into the atmosphere? It's the #1 problem for global warming. They're working on that. Lucky Iron Fish out of Cambodia is where the technology started. is trying to reduce iron deficiency anemia all over the world in a new low-cost way that doesn't require pills or vitamins. And Juno Therapeutics is a company that Kirchner's been involved in, where we actually helped with the Series A round. Their first venture capital A round was $176 million. It's a cancer therapeutic company, and it was the second fastest company ever to go from startup to an IPO, only behind YouTube. So we've been very fortunate to work with some great companies along the way. But I will tell you, despite the mistakes and the bumps and all the different companies that I've worked with, as I stand in front of you today, I think the single most important thing that I look for in a company is this. I look for entrepreneurial teams that love their problem and they love their people. Clearly, we've had some speakers here already in the first three that love their problem. They're kind of crazy about it. They can't stop thinking about it. That's what you want. You want someone who is not motivated by the money. The money will come. If you do this and you do it well and you have the right idea, the money will come. But it's the secondary. That's the scoreboard. All right, what drives you is solving the problem, because those people don't quit. What we've found over the years, that if I work with a group that's just motivated by the money, when things get tough, they're far more likely to quit. But the teams that are motivated by solving the problems, they don't quit. They find a new way they work around, and in doing that, our investments do better. Loving your people is not just your employees. It's your customers, it's your vendors, and it's your investors. All right, so a little more on what I mean by loving your problem. So all of us, as we move through our day, we'll see things that'll drive us crazy, right? With my wife, she's an attorney, but the thing that really drives her crazy is litter. She can't stop thinking about it. She'll want to rearrange trash cans at the airport to get people to recycle more. And so but she hasn't turned that into a business yet. With me, the thing that drives me crazy is youth sports coaching. Okay? It's when I was jogging one day near my house and I was running by a baseball field. And we'll never forget this. I was jogging and there was a game underway. And I hear this dad, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs at his child, who's the pitcher, and yelling, "Just throw strikes! Just throw strikes!" And the kid on the mound, I looked over and he's sobbing and says, "I'm trying to throw strikes." I wanted to jump over the fence and say to the dad, give him some information that he can use. Give him some information he can use. Don't just yell at him. So if I could do anything in my next career, it would be to work with somehow invent a business that would help people do a better job of coaching. This next fellow here, this gentleman, in my opinion, he's an American. Of the 700 million Americans that have ever lived, 100 million of which were immigrants at some point, I believe this is the best American that's ever lived. Now, my current president would probably tell you he's the best American that's ever lived, but I think it's this guy. I think it's this guy, George Washington Carver. He was born a slave before the Civil War, and when he was very young, his mother was taken away from him, and he was abandoned. It was actually the Ku Klux Klan took his mom away, so he was an orphan at a very young age. And a family in Missouri took him in and adopted him and raised him, but he was so traumatized by what had happened to him when he was young that he didn't speak until he was 8 years old. And the first words he ever spoke, he would actually not speak very often. He would go to meals, he would do what he was told, but what he loved to do was sit and look at the crops. He would look at the trees, he would look at the things that were growing. And the first words he ever spoke, when he ran out, and he ran out to his adopted parents, and he yelled, "Death, death, death." And he was pointing up in the trees. And what he had seen in the orchard was disease that was coming in on some of the branches. And because of that, the farmer was able to go and cut those branches off and save the orchard. He was incredibly tuned to nature. So hundreds of years ago, he was thinking about soil when other people weren't thinking about soil. And his passion, the thing that drove him crazy, was extracting high-value items from very simple products, from very simple crops. He had 100 inventions from a peanut. Thomas Edison, the great inventor, offered him $100,000 to come work with him in New York, and he said, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to work with the rural farmers and help their lives be better. That kind of passion and drive, he wouldn't leave it for any reason. Now this fellow here, does anyone know who that guy is? Somebody knows, please. Tony Hawk. Okay, Tony Hawk, one of the most recognized faces on earth. Tony Hawk exhibits that drive, not in a business context, but certainly in his professional context. And there's a professor at Boston College, Ellen Windner, who has described people like Tony Hawk as they have a thing called rage to master. They have a rage to master. It is very similar to loving your problem. But the thing I love about Tony Hawk, and I would encourage you when you go home tonight is YouTube this up if you've never looked at it, was in 1999, at the 1999 X Games, no one had ever performed a 900. And what that means, of course, is 360 degrees, 180 degrees. Like 2.5 full spins in the air on a skateboard. No one had ever done it. And he competed in the contest, and he didn't win. He went last, but he crashed when he tried to do the 900. And so he didn't win. He actually finished third. But then the most amazing thing happened is he got up and he grabbed his board and he walked back up. The competition was over. He's not going to win. But he grabbed his board and he went back up and he tried it again. And he crashed. And the people who were probably starting to head toward the doors kind of stopped and went, what's going on? And he did it again. And he did it again. And he crashed and he crashed and he crashed. And he basically said he was going to make it or they were going to haul him off on a stretcher that day. But again, the competition's over. And eventually he did it. Now when you pulled up that YouTube to see how many millions of times it's been seen, it's extraordinary. But he didn't win. He didn't win the prize. But he did win in the fact that he conquered the problem that he loved. Now if you put this in a business context, I want to talk to you about a company, one of my favorite companies that I've ever worked with. Now has anyone in the room ever been at a traffic light? Let's say it's late at night, and you're in the middle of a country road and you pull up and there's a traffic light and it's red. And you stop and you wait. No one's coming. And you wait and you wait and you're like, this is crazy. There's got to be a better way. Well, that problem inspired two entrepreneurs from Tennessee to say, we've got to solve this. This is nuts. And they were really smart and they started to gather some people around them. And they said, we need to prove on the existing technology, and really there's two kinds. And I don't know what they use in Leon, but in a lot of places you'll see little cuts in the ground, and you know that if you pull over that thing, it might trigger the light. Some places it's just timing. But they said, look, we're going to invent a new device it looks like half a crystal ball, and it looks in all directions all the time. And by using computing power, it can track and classify anything that's moving through the intersection. So it doesn't guess anymore. It's like having a traffic cop standing there the whole time. It can even prevent a wreck. Because what it can do is it can see that a car is coming, and it can know that it's going to run the red light. It can say, oh, you're 100 meters away from the intersection, you're going this fast, you're going to run the red light. And it can prevent a terrible T-bone crash, because what it does is it still goes red, they still run the red light, but it doesn't release the green light on the other side. So hundreds of thousands of accidents can be prevented. And that's what was motivating and driving them. But they did it in a way also by loving their people. They treated their vendors well, they treated their employees well, they treated their investors well, they shared the bad news with us, they were very candid and transparent. Now underlying all of that, and that's the kind of company I think you want to be, driven by passion to solve a problem, but having great respect for all of those parties that you work with. But underneath all of it is a requisite element of success is a core set of values. And I think values are one of the most misunderstood things in business. And as you're starting a company, you have a wonderful opportunity to set values as you move forward. Now, most of those values you learned when you were in kindergarten. It's true. Be on time, tell the truth, be respectful of others, the basics. But there are other values as well. Regulatory compliance, investor transparency, paying your taxes. All of these kinds of things are values that are how you conduct your business. Now, when we meet, so if I'm meeting with an entrepreneurial company, and one of your companies was coming in to talk about raising some money from me, the most important thing, I'm going to look at passion, I'm going to look at how you think about people. One of the most interesting things is I love to hear an entrepreneur tell me how they treat their spouse. I want to hear them talk about their spouse. Because how they treat their spouse is sometimes an indicator of how they're going to treat me as a partner. Okay, I'm looking for these kinds of indicators, but I'm also looking for a commitment to a set of values. And here's why. And here's why it's worth money. Having the right values is worth money. Because I have a vast network. The Kirchner Group has a vast network. We've worked for years and years and years. We cherish that network. We can place a lot of phone calls and help you, or not. But if I know that the company we've invested in will conduct themselves in a certain way, I know they'll be polite, I know they'll be on time, I know they're never going to embarrass this individual by not doing some proper regulatory thing, I'm far more likely to pick up the phone and set up a meeting, and I'm not going to worry. The extension of values is an incredibly powerful tool, and it's often misunderstood. And it's not lip service. It has to be core to your DNA. Now, a point on that is that doesn't mean it necessarily has to come from your heart. I mean, it's probably best if the values come from your heart, but it doesn't have to. It can be a decision. You say, no, I am deciding that I will, or our company will, conduct itself in a certain way. As long as you do that all the time, and do that for the rest of your life, we're going to end up in the same place anyway. So I'm running short on time here, so I'll be quick to wrap up. You can make a lot of money and be an ass, that's for sure. But as you do it, as you cut corners and you cheat along the way, you're building little time bombs of risk that may come up and bite you down the road. They're just little bombs that you're placing there out there because you didn't do the things the right way. In a prior life, I used to work in law enforcement in the United States, and we were on occasion following someone we thought was a bad guy and we needed to find more evidence. And when you follow a car, it's not like on TV where it's just one car and they get behind them. I mean, you have a series of cars and one person will stay with them for a little bit and then they'll pull off, and then the next one will go and they'll pull off. It's a very coordinated activity. But oftentimes a bad guy will learn over time to drive in a very erratic way so they can determine if someone is following them. They'll do a lot of unnecessary U-turns, or they'll make sudden, change from the far left lane to the far right lane. And one night, when my boss called and she said, okay guys, we're done for the night, let's go home. So I turned to go home, and as I looked up and saw the car that I'd been following, I saw that he was still doing U-turns. Like, I was going to go home and be in bed, asleep, and he's going to be doing U-turns and doing this and that. And so what kind of life had he created for himself because he, had chosen to have those little time bombs along the way? So let me conclude with this. We've got some great companies here, right? Find your passion. You're doing that. Assemble your people, like-minded people. Sell a little bit of stuff. Grow a little bit. If you need a little help to get to cash flow positive, try to find a like-minded investor that shares your values, that brings some network. get to cash flow break even, grow some more. If you've got a competitor that's a bad actor and you happen to take them out along the way, all the better. Grow some more. Treat the planet well, treat your people well, treat your vendors well, treat your investors well. And you can go to bed at night knowing that you have left behind you a huge wake of good. And although it may not be as beautiful as a symphony, I assure you it will be a damn beautiful thing. So thank you very much. All right.